Welcome to this deep dive explainer. If you're a C-suite executive, a founder, or an independent board member, you already know the view from the top isn't exactly as crystal clear as people think. Today, we're literally unpacking the gritty, unfiltered reality of boardroom decisions. All right, let's just quickly glance at our roadmap. We'll be moving rapidly through 5 key phases today: board decisions, strategic choice, power and politics, decision quality, and finally, execution risk.
I want to start by hitting you with a really stark question, just to get our minds right. Why do perfect strategies, the ones that look absolutely flawless on paper, completely fail in reality? Throughout this explainer, we're going to expose the massive gap between pristine academic strategy and the chaotic, frankly messy reality of the actual boardroom.
Starting off with Section 1, board-level decisions and the C-suite mindset. We really need to establish the fundamental gap between the managerial mindset and a C-suite mindset. Think about it. Daily operations, they involve clear data, they're reversible, and their impacts are short-term. But board decisions, you are forced to make monumental choices with missing puzzle pieces. These choices are often totally irreversible and dictate the survival of the company for the next 5 to 20 years. If you sell off a core business unit today, you can't just hit undo tomorrow. And to make matters even more complex, sitting in that boardroom is fundamentally a high-wire balancing act governed by 4 massive paradoxes. You've got to oversee the company, but you absolutely can't micromanage operations. You have to support the CEO, right? But remain independent enough to fire them if things go south. You've got to drive aggressive growth while simultaneously keeping a tight lid on risk. And you must deliver shareholder returns without destroying your other stakeholders like your employees or the community. Now, if you open literally any management textbook, you're going to see this perfect, rational, comprehensive model for making these decisions. 7 crisp, logical steps. Define the problem, set criteria, build alternatives, run the analysis, debate, decide, and monitor. It sounds incredibly authoritative and clean, doesn't it? But hold on to that thought, because this perfect sequence is about to be completely shattered.
Which brings us to Section 2, strategic choice theory, going well beyond that 7-step myth.
Enter what we call the garbage can model. Now, if you've spent any time at all in an executive role, this is absolutely going to validate your lived experience. Strategies aren't always born from pure logic. Sometimes it's just a totally non-linear reality. You've got floating organizational problems, random solutions just desperately looking for a home, various participant agendas, and sheer chance opportunities. We've all seen it happen. A major strategic shift occurs simply because a new CEO wants to make their mark. Right at the exact moment, an aggressive vendor happens to pitch a shiny new tech solution. These elements collide, and boom, a decision is made. Moving right into Section 3, power and politics, and those internal, invisible forces.
Because decisions aren't just about data. They are entirely about who actually wields power. And there are 5 main sources here: positional, information, expert, network, and symbolic power. Let's just focus on information power for a second. A CFO or an IT director can entirely weaponize information. They can present highly conservative cash flow models or use incredibly complex technical jargon to quietly kill a project they just don't like. And they can do this long before the board even gets to take a vote.
Let's look at a real-world scenario from our source material. Imagine a logistics group wants to buy a last-mile delivery tech startup. The executive board is pushing hard for it, pointing to massive revenue growth. But the CFO pushes back on the valuation. It actually takes an independent board member, utilizing their expert power, to step in and ask the ultimate rhetorical anchor question. Are we buying technology? Are we buying customers? Or are we literally just buying top-line revenue? Power alliances can so easily push a terrible deal through if questions exactly like this aren't challenging the main narrative. That takes us to Section 4, decision quality and how we go about measuring the chaos. The absolute crucial point here is that you have to separate the decision itself from the outcome. Decision quality is judged at the exact moment the choice is made. Was the problem framed correctly? Was the information actually solid? Was the debate rigorous? The outcome, on the other hand, is heavily influenced by totally external factors. We're talking luck, unexpected wars, or global pandemics. A good outcome doesn't necessarily mean you had a good decision process. Honestly, you might have just gotten incredibly lucky. And conversely, a bad outcome doesn't mean the board was wrong. You always have to judge the process itself.
And to ensure you have a good process, before the ink even dries on a major strategic shift, the board must ask this ultimate strategic stop-loss question: When will we know this decision is wrong? It's a heavy question, but organizations rarely die from making mistakes. They die from not knowing when to pull the plug.
Finally, Section 5, Strategy Execution Risk. Welcome to the graveyard, where strategies go to die. Let's say the board actually makes a brilliant, perfectly aligned decision. We now enter the strategy execution gap. Let's do a rapid-fire breakdown of the 7 execution failures, starting right off with cognitive failure. This is leadership's total inability to see the shifting market. You misread the environment because you're too busy trusting the network of physical stores that made you successful in the past, completely blinding you to a massive digital shift. Next up is political failure. Think of this as covert resistance. The executives who stand to lose power, budget, or prestige in the new strategy, yeah, they aren't going to fight you openly. Instead, they'll quietly sabotage it from the inside using delayed data, malicious compliance, and whispering campaigns. Then we have structural failure. This is literally when your own org chart fights the strategy. You simply cannot have a seamless omni-channel retail strategy if your online managers and your offline store managers are actively competing against each other for the exact same KPIs and bonuses. Fourth is cultural failure. If your boardroom strategy demands bold, disruptive innovation, but your middle management culture relentlessly punishes mistakes, well, your strategy is dead on arrival. Employees will always choose safety over innovation if their jobs are on the line. Fifth is capability failure. This is the sheer lack of technical or operational skills needed to actually pull off the board's grand vision. I mean, you can't dream up a massive AI-driven digital transformation if your entire organization lacks even a single data architect to actually build the thing. Sixth, measurement failure. If you're measuring the wrong metrics, you're just giving the board a false sense of security. If you measure a digital transformation by the number of software licenses deployed, rather than how much it actually increased decision speed or lowered customer acquisition costs, you are fundamentally failing the execution.
And finally, we hit learning failure. A culture of fear absolutely prevents bad news from flowing upward. When subordinates are terrified to report a failure, the board remains completely in the dark. And guess what? They only find out the strategy is failing when the cost to fix it has become absolutely fatal.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Look at your own organization. Look at the real dynamics happening in your boardroom, and ask yourself honestly, is your board truly ready to execute? Are you just making choices, or do you actually have the power, the culture, and the discipline to turn those choices into reality? Thanks for joining me today, and keep questioning those perfect strategies.